My parents called me too overweight for the family picture. They chuckled while my sister's dog replaced me in the shot. I just grinned. They had no clue what my next move would be. It was supposed to be the perfect day. My cousin Emma's 8th birthday party, one of those rare occasions when our entire family actually showed up. The backyard of Grandma's old Victorian house was buzzing with energy. Pink and gold balloons danced in the summer breeze, kids chased each other around the rose garden, and Mom had hired some fancy photographer from downtown to capture what she called our legacy moment. I stood near the kitchen door, balancing a tray of homemade red velvet cupcakes I'd spent half the night perfecting. Nobody asked me to bake them. Nobody ever asked me to do anything, really. But I always tried to contribute, to show I belonged, even when I felt like a ghost at my own family gatherings. At 28, I was the eldest daughter, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays, who organized the gift collections, who showed up early to help set up. I was also the one they called big-boned, in polite company, and the heavy one, when they thought I couldn't hear. When the photographer, a thin woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, called everyone over to the garden arch, my heart did this little flutter. Finally, I thought. Finally, I'd be in one of those beautiful family portraits that would hang in someone's hallway for years to come. I started walking toward the group, cupcakes still in hand, when Mom threw up her hand like she was stopping traffic. "Not now, sweetie," she said without even looking at me. "Let's get the main family shot first." The word, main, hit me like a slap. I wasn't part of the main family, apparently. I was some kind of side character. I watched as they arranged themselves perfectly. My gorgeous sister Jessica with her yoga instructor body, her hedge fund manager husband Brad, and the two picture-perfect kids. Mom and Dad flanking them like proud peacocks. My brother Mike with his new girlfriend, a Instagram model type with cheekbones that could cut glass. I stood there holding melting cupcakes, sweating in my only decent dress from Target, waiting for my turn that never came. But the real knife to the heart came when Jessica, loud enough for the photographer and half the neighborhood to hear, said, "Let's not ruin this shot with any extra weight." Everyone laughed. Even the photographer smirked. And nobody, not one person, told her to stop. That night, I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic outside Grandma's house, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The party was still going on behind those glowing windows. I could hear the laughter, the music, the clinking of wine glasses. They probably hadn't even noticed I'd left. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Where did you go? We need someone to help clean up." Of course, I wasn't good enough for the photos, but I was perfect for the cleanup crew. I turned off my phone and drove home to my small apartment across town. The one I'd been renting for 3 years while saving every penny I could. The one my family thought was cute, in that patronizing way people talk about things that are clearly beneath them. For 2 days, I didn't answer calls or texts. I ignored the messages asking where the good photos were, as if I was some kind of family paparazzi. I even ignored my boss when he texted about our huge Monday presentation, the one that could change everything for our little startup. But I wasn't ignoring them because I was broken. I was ignoring them because I was done. Done shrinking myself to fit into the narrow definition of worthy. Done swallowing their casual cruelty like it was some kind of bitter medicine I deserved. See, here's what they never bothered to find out about me. While they were busy cropping me out of photos and treating me like the family charity case, I'd been building something incredible. 3 years ago, I'd started a wellness company called Bloom Thrive. Not some diet scam or quick fix nonsense, but a real platform focused on mental health, body positivity, and healing from family trauma. I'd kept it quiet, partly because I knew if Dad found out, he'd try to take over with his business expertise, and partly because I wanted to prove I could do something entirely on my own. The irony was delicious. While they mocked my weight and excluded me from the perfect pictures, I was building a company that would soon help thousands of women love themselves exactly as they were. And here's the kicker, we'd just landed our biggest client yet. A major hotel chain wanted to partner with us for wellness retreats at their premium properties. One of those properties, the Grandview Manor, the fancy venue where they'd held Emma's party. The same place where my sister had called me extra weight, was about to become mine. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I walked into our downtown office that Monday morning wearing my best black blazer and the red heels I'd been saving for a special occasion. My assistant, Maria, handed me a coffee and a stack of contracts that needed my signature. "The Grandview Manor deal is ready for final approval," she said, not knowing she'd just handed me the keys to my revenge. I didn't hesitate. I signed off on the acquisition and immediately sent a note to our new property management team. The venue would be rebranded as a Bloom Thrive Wellness Retreat Center. All future events would need board approval, with priority given to mental health workshops, body positivity seminars, and healing circles. Family celebration events, especially those promoting harmful beauty standards, would be deprioritized. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. Mom's voice was unusually high and strained. "Hi, sweetheart. So, we're planning Jessica's anniversary party, at the Grandview Manor where we had Emma's birthday. Can you believe it's been a year? Anyway, your father thinks we should book early because..." "Oh," I interrupted sweetly, "Grandview is under new management now." Silence. "I'm sure they'll figure something out," I continued, examining my freshly manicured nails. "Though I don't think they're accepting bookings from clients who promote body shaming anymore." The call ended awkwardly, but that was just the beginning. I started showing up, not at the dinner parties or photo shoots, but on podcasts, at conferences, and in interviews. I talked openly about being the family outcast, about how being labeled too much and not enough simultaneously had driven me to create something powerful. The response was overwhelming. Women reached out from all over the country, sharing their own stories of family rejection and finding strength in shared struggle. My cousin Rachel, who'd battled eating disorders for years, called me crying after watching one of my interviews. "I never knew," she whispered. "You were always so quiet, so sweet, and they just erased you." "I let them," I admitted. "But not anymore." The Grandview Manor became the crown jewel of our retreat program. I filled those same ballrooms where I'd felt invisible with women who were learning to take up space, to be seen, to matter. And every single workshop I held there felt like healing. 6 months after the birthday party disaster, something unexpected happened. Jessica showed up at one of my workshops. She slipped in during the middle of my talk titled, "Healing from Family Wounds," and sat in the very back row, wearing sunglasses indoors like some kind of celebrity trying not to be recognized. I saw her the moment she walked in. You don't forget the face of someone who's spent years making you feel small. But I didn't call her out. I didn't even acknowledge her presence. Instead, I kept talking about the invisible daughters, the forgotten sisters, the women who'd been told they were too much of something and not enough of everything else. "The people who hurt us most," I said, looking directly at the back of the room, "are often the ones who love us least skillfully. They mistake cruelty for honesty, exclusion for standards, and silence for peace." I saw her shoulders shake. She left without saying a word. That same week, I got an email with no subject line, "I'm sorry, Jay." But the real apology came 2 months later, in the form of an invitation that changed everything. The American Women's Business Summit had invited me to be their keynote speaker. It was the kind of event my father's construction company had sponsored for years, not as a major donor, mind you, but enough to get seats at the fancy tables where they served overpriced chicken and networking opportunities. I accepted immediately. The night of the summit, I stood backstage in a custom-made emerald green dress that fit me perfectly, not because I'd lost weight to appease anyone, but because I'd finally learned that I deserved clothes that celebrated my body instead of hiding it. From behind the curtain, I could see the audience settling into their seats. And there, at table 12, sat my parents. Mom was wearing her pearls, the ones she always wore to important events. Dad had on his best suit, the one he'd bought for Jessica's wedding. They had no idea the disappointment of a daughter was about to take the stage. When the announcer called my name and my face appeared on the giant screen behind the podium, I watched their expressions change from casual interest to shock to something that might have been pride, if they remembered how to feel that about me. I didn't falter. I walked to that microphone and owned that stage like I'd been born for it. They called me too fat, too loud, too emotional, too invisible, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. So I decided to become too powerful to ignore. The audience erupted. 1,000 successful women rose to their feet, recognizing something in my story that echoed in their own lives. I talked about Bloom Thrive, about the women we'd helped, about turning pain into purpose and rejection into rocket fuel. But I also talked about the cost. About birthdays spent feeling like a burden, about family photos that required my absence, about the slow, soul-crushing realization that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally had placed very clear conditions on their affection. The beautiful thing about being underestimated, I said, wrapping up my speech, is that you get to surprise everyone, including yourself, with who you really are. Another standing ovation. This one lasted 5 full minutes. After the event, I didn't go to the networking after-party. Instead, I drove to Riverside Park, where I used to hide as a kid when family gatherings became too overwhelming. There was an old oak tree there, the one I'd carved my initials into when I was 10, back when I still believed that marking my presence somewhere might make me matter. The initials were still there, weathered but visible. SM was here. Sarah Martinez was here. Had always been here. They just hadn't been looking. I stood under that tree for a long time, thinking about the girl who'd carved those letters. She'd been hoping someone would notice, would see the mark she'd made and remember her. She had no idea that 28-year-old Sarah would be the one to finally see her, to finally say, "You matter, you belong, you are enough." My phone buzzed with notifications, interview requests, partnership offers, messages from women who'd watched the live stream and seen themselves in my story. But there was one text that made me pause. It was from Mom. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer that night. Some conversations require preparation, and I'd learned the hard way that rushing into emotional confrontations with my family usually ended with me feeling smaller than when I started. But I knew that eventually, I'd have to decide, was I ready to let them back in, or was moving forward always going to mean moving away? 2 weeks later, I met Mom at Murphy's Coffee House, not the trendy chain she usually preferred, but the little independent place downtown with mismatched chairs and a resident tabby cat named Hemingway who had claimed the sunny spot by the window. She arrived exactly on time, which surprised me. Mom was chronically late to everything except the things that mattered to her. Maybe this mattered. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. No makeup, no carefully styled hair, just my mother, stripped of all the armor she usually wore to face the world. "I don't know how to do this," she said before I could even sit down. "I don't know how to apologize for 28 years of getting it wrong." I ordered my coffee, a large caramel macchiato with extra whipped cream, because I'd stopped pretending I didn't like sweet things just to make other people comfortable, and waited. "I watched your speech," she continued, her hands wrapped around her plain black coffee like it was anchoring her. "I watched it 7 times, actually. The first time, I was angry. The second time, I was defensive. By the 7th time, I was just ashamed." She pulled something out of her purse, a printed photograph. It was from Emma's birthday party, but this wasn't one of the perfect shots. This was a candid photo someone had taken while I was standing off to the side with my cupcakes, looking hopeful and heartbreakingly young. "The photographer sent us all the pictures," Mom said quietly. "Including this one. I've been staring at it for months, trying to figure out how I raised a daughter who could become so successful and still look so lonely in a room full of her own family." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't cry. I'd done enough crying over this family. "I can't undo what we did," she said. "I can't take back the words, the exclusions, the way we made you feel like you had to earn love instead of just receiving it. But I want to try to do better. If you'll let me." It wasn't the perfect apology. It didn't erase years of hurt or instantly rebuild trust. But it was real, and it was a start. "There's something I need you to understand," I said finally. "I didn't build my success to spite you. I built it to save myself. And that means I can't go back to being the version of Sarah who disappears so everyone else can shine." She nodded, tears finally spilling over. "I don't want you to disappear. I want to learn how to see you." 6 months after that coffee shop conversation, I launched the biggest campaign of my career. It was a national initiative called Reclaimed Spaces, a program that transformed venues with histories of exclusion into healing environments for marginalized communities. The launch event was held at the Grandview Manor, in the exact same ballroom where Emma's party had taken place. But this time, every chair had a nameplate, and every nameplate read the same thing: reserved for someone who matters. The campaign's centerpiece was a commercial that aired during prime time on every major network. It showed me walking through the manor, past the garden arch where I'd been excluded, past the table where no seat had been saved for me. But this time, the space was filled with women of all sizes, colors, and backgrounds, women who'd been told they were too much or not enough, women who'd learned to reclaim their worth. The commercial ended with me standing in front of that old oak tree in Riverside Park, pointing to my childhood initials, and saying, "You can't erase someone who finally chose to be seen." The response was incredible. The hashtag reclaimed spaces trended for weeks. Women shared their own stories of family rejection and personal triumph. Bloom Thrive expanded into 12 new cities. But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source, Jessica. "I've been watching everything you've built," she wrote. "Not just the business, but the woman you've become. I'm starting therapy to figure out why I thought hurting you would somehow make me feel better about myself. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know, I see you now. I finally see you." The real victory wasn't in the success or the recognition or even the apology. It was in the moment I realized I no longer needed their validation to know my worth. Last month, at Emma's 9th birthday party, I was asked to take the family photo. Not as the photographer, but as the one behind the camera, orchestrating the shot. And when the formal pictures were done, I handed the camera to someone else and stepped into the frame. This time, I didn't wait to be invited. I didn't shrink myself to fit their image. I took my place in the center of the photo, smiled genuinely, and let myself be seen. Later, when the photographer sent us the pictures, I had them all printed, even the ones where someone was blinking or laughing too hard or caught mid-sentence. Because real families aren't perfect. They're just real. And the little girl who once carved her initials in a tree, hoping someone would notice she'd been there. She finally understood the truth. She didn't need anyone else to see her mark on the world. She was the one holding the camera now.